I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championships.
The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks on a Monday. Appreciate you all so much for joining me. The weeks are flying by. I'm wearing an Eddie George jersey today. If you hadn't heard, Eddie George, the former coach of Tennessee State, now the coach of Bowling Green State University. Eddie George coaching in the MAC. He'll be in the city. He'll be in Akron soon with Bowling Green. I'll go see him and report back to you guys. I'm pumped for this, not just because he's coaching at Bowling Green, but because it says for sure Eddie is all in on his college coaching career. He wants to be a head coach. He wants to climb the ladder. I wasn't sure when he was at Tennessee State. I didn't know if this was maybe I'm just going to do this for a couple of years, see how it goes. Maybe it started like that, but it is clear now that he's taken the Bowling Green State University job that he is trying to climb the coaching ranks. And now when we look around college football, we got Eddie George, we got Luke Fickell, we got Marcus at Notre Dame, we got Alex Golish, who didn't play at Ohio State, but went to Ohio State, and Jim Tressel calls him one of his guys because he was a GA under him at Ohio State. He's down at South Florida. So 4 current college coaches in the FBS, former Buckeyes, and that's pretty cool. But when we look at Eddie, like Bowling Green's almost impossible to win there, but you don't need to win big to climb the ladder from Bowling Green. You just need to make them better. We've seen it plenty of times. We saw it with Urban Meyer. We saw it with Dino Babers. We've seen it plenty of times, and Eddie has a leg up on Dino Babers and Urban Meyer. So if Eddie is really in this, he could potentially get a really big job out of there. Everybody loves him. He's smart as hell. He's great looking. He's obviously got everything that young players are looking for to draw them in. And he's just so bright, man. He's just so interesting to listen to. I think he's going to kill it. And I'm really excited about this one. So congrats to Eddie. Cannot wait to see what he does with the Falcons in the orange and brown. The same colors as my Cleveland Browns. You know why? Not because they copied the Browns. It was Paul Brown that copied their colors for the Browns. How about that? Now, we've obviously got a lot to talk about. We're 1 week away from spring. I can't wait. Spring practice. I don't know when like dates of the seasons come. I don't go by that. I go by the football team. And we're 1 week away. Being that we're 1 week away, we haven't had our guy Dillon Davis on in a while. So let's bring Dillon in. He and I are going to talk about all the information we learned on Friday with all the coaches and get into some stuff as we head into spring. And this spring, way more exciting than last spring, where we pretty much knew everything that was going on already. There was a couple odds and ends. Who's going to start at right guard? Who's going to win the fake quarterback competition? What does Caleb Downs look like in a Buckeye uniform? How good is JJ really? Other than that, that was it. We knew the starters. We knew the 2 deep at every position. This year, there's a whole lot of unanswered questions. Even though we think we know a whole lot, there's a lot of positions where, okay, this guy could maybe get hopped up, get jumped over. Certainly the 2 deep. There's a whole lot of up for grabs stuff. And this one's going to be really fun, really exciting. Can't wait for that. So joining us now from the Delaware Gazette, my buddy Dillon Davis. Joining us again, it's been a while, my good buddy Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette. Dillon, how we doing, brother?
Doing well. So I'm enjoying some time off, the off season, and things slowing down a little bit, but excited. Spring practice is right around the corner next week. So, or I guess almost next week. So, yeah, excited to get back into it as well, but I've enjoyed a little bit of time off. It seems like it was just a couple of days ago that I was getting home from Atlanta, and it's kind of breezed by, but I've enjoyed kind of taking a step back a little bit.
Well, it's time to get back popping. So we had this huge press conference the other day, and we got everybody. I wasn't expecting that, but every single coach talked for at least 15 minutes. And I want to start with Matt Patricia. Now, I know obviously you're a one-man show and they're going at the same time, but I know that you did get to sit in front of Patricia, Hartline, Coach Locke, and I think somebody else.
Keenan Bailey.
And Keenan. Wow. We got to talk about that one too. Yeah. But starting with Matt Patricia, we've not talked about that hire, you and I on the show. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that hire, and how much of a downgrade from Knowles, if any, do you think that is?
It's tough to project what kind of upgrade, downgrade it'll be. Certainly, my initial thoughts with the hire, I know it was a very polarizing hire for the fan base and just nationally. I liked it. Look, the fact of the matter is, the timing of Jim Knowles leaving and when Ryan Day had to try to figure out who's going to lead his defense this next year was less than ideal. And I know there's an element of Ohio State being Ohio State, so you go out and get whoever you want to whenever you want to, but that's not entirely the case. There are other things that factor into just Ohio State saying that, hey, we're going to call this guy and we're Ohio State, so he's going to take this job. So given with the time that they had and the options that were truly out there, the realistic options, I thought I was really excited for the hire. I understand Matt Patricia had his struggles in Detroit. I have no idea why so many people draw a correlation between how he struggled in Detroit and what he's going to do at Ohio State. At the end of the day, as Ryan alluded to on Friday, like his experience speaks for itself. His tenure in New England for arguably the greatest head coach in NFL history, and his ability to stay on that staff and not just stay on that staff, but have a ton of success, that speaks for itself. I don't know a whole lot about Matt Patricia, the person, how he gels with players, how he interacts with them. I see a lot of people reference that and suggest that that's going to be an issue. I'll tell you what, probably maybe for anybody I talked to on Friday that stood out the most is that Matt Patricia is clearly, without even knowing Matt Patricia, just having ever gotten to talk to him, in the past, I can already tell that Matt Patricia is a different guy today or on Friday, being in Columbus than he has been before. He seems completely rejuvenated, and nothing like what everybody suggested he was in Detroit or even in that short stint at Philly before they didn't retain him. So I like the hire because of experience. Anytime you can get a guy who has NFL experience and not just NFL experience, but success in the NFL, I just think that's just an obvious draw in recruiting on top of the fact that you're already recruiting for Ohio State. So I love the thought of that. I don't know how much tenure there will be at Ohio State. I don't know what kind of move this is in Matt Patricia's eyes and his heart of hearts, if he thinks that he wants to be in college for 2, 3, or even more years, or if this is just a get my name back out there and kind of get back on the radar to get back in the NFL. I don't know, but if this is a 2 or 3 year deal, at least for Ohio State, I really like to hire because of experience. And a lot was made of Matt Patricia when they hired him being more of like a 3-4 guy. And I think there's some misconceptions out there. And I was glad to hear that Ryan and Matt addressed that. He's done a lot of different things in the NFL, in terms of what kind of defenses he wants to deploy, things like that. And I think that can only help Ohio State as well to be able to have a lot of different looks that they can utilize with the personnel that they have. So I loved the hire. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a home run hire and how could this guy fail? And obviously there's an element of wait and see with that, but I really like the hire. If Matt Patricia is really truly as rejuvenated as he seemed on Friday with his defensive mind, I don't think there's any question in his defensive mind. I don't see how you cannot like it. I know a lot of people out there don't like it. I think there's some swaying going on with how many people, whether it be Lions fans, which are obviously also Michigan fans, making their comments about his time in Detroit and things like that. But I think if you can just isolate everything and just look at Matt Patricia, the career he's had, who he's coached, how he's coached them, the success he's had, I don't know how you could say that with Ohio State's talent level that it wouldn't be successful, but we'll find out.
I'm not somebody who, when somebody leaves Ohio State, I all of a sudden change my opinion about him. I think Jim Knowles is awesome. I think he's really, really good. But he was also awesome with some of the best talent that we've seen in college football on one defense in a very long time. When I look at Patricia, and I've talked to, a lot of Buckeye fans since that hire and seen a lot of polls, and the reason most people keep coming back to the reason they don't like him is the time in Detroit and the reputation with the players. And then we watch him on Friday. I mean, you stood right in front of him. This to me looks like a guy who perhaps knows what his reputation is and wants to make sure that that's not something that sticks with him anymore. And it felt like genuine excitement for the future.
Sure.
It really came off very, very well. When he talks about his overarching philosophy, like you were talking about, he said, I can coach it all. I have coached it all. Yeah. My overarching philosophy is putting guys in the right places to make plays. And when we talk about not really changing the defense, just adding tweaks here and there, I just feel like at a place like Ohio State, where you have so many guys that are freaky athletes here or there that are either older and maybe couldn't grasp the entire system, or are younger and haven't had the time yet, various stages of development, but can maybe do one thing really well. And obviously, like CJ Hicks is someone who would jump right out at you. The fact that he brought up, I'm looking at Sonny and I'm looking at Arvell thinking, oh, I can do this with him. I can do him with that. I don't think that really there's a better fit in the country for a guy like that than in Ohio State when you've got this kind of talent to work with.
I totally agree. And going back to that point about how late it was almost February when Ryan Day had to find a new defensive coordinator. To be able to bring a guy in who's that versatile and what he wants to do, and is not, you're not going to pigeonhole this defense into it has to be this kind of thing. If you want to try to hit the ground running right into the spring with not a lot of time, to bring in a guy like that who has that versatility, and the guy who's coached it all, as he said, and can kind of just figure things out on the fly, with a bunch of athletes on the defense, it seems like it's a really good match. One thing I wanted to add, and going back to just how rejuvenated it seemed like Matt Patricia was. Again, having not known him before, having talked to him before, it just seems like he is, and I've seen a lot of people say that as well. People who maybe did pay a lot more attention to him and when he was in the NFL. But going back to that, Ryan made the comment, and I don't think it was just lip service because he didn't have to say it, but he made the comment about one of the biggest things when he was looking for a defensive coordinator and ultimately settling on Patricia was that Patricia had to be able to be willing to work with the rest of that defensive staff and the rest of that room. And I don't know about this year off for Matt Patricia. He was asked about it. Obviously, I don't know in his heart of hearts how much that really did for him and being out of football for a year and just kind of, analyzing the college football or just the football world in general from afar. But would Matt Patricia have been as willing to come to a place like Ohio State if, say that was a thing that ended up happening, if he was never out of football for a year and just be willing to work with everybody? I don't know, but it makes a lot of sense. It stands to reason that with that year off that, he kind of be able to he reset himself and kind of maybe even humbled himself to some degree and said, yeah, I'll go to Ohio State. I'll go to the college level and I'll work with these guys. Obviously Ohio State has a proven track record of success. They have a formula for how you win a lot of college football games, and I'll go in there and work with those guys. If for whatever reason the cards fell the way they did 5 years ago, Matt Patricia, who he was 5 years ago and was never out of football, if this happened and for whatever reason the opportunity came to him and said, hey, you could be the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, would he have been as willing to work with guys, or was he going to come to Ohio State and say, look, I'm Matt Patricia. This is the way I do things. Look at my success, in the NFL. This is how we're going to do it. I don't know. We'll never know that, but it stands to reason that with that year off that Matt Patricia was willing to say, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to go there and just be a part of what Ohio State has. And we hear everybody talk about how special of a place it is. And I think Matt Patricia understands that as well. So it seems like that was probably an element of it as well, which just, again, makes me even more encouraged that if you have a reset, rejuvenated, refreshed, open to a lot of things, Matt Patricia with the rest of the people they have on that defensive staff. Once again, I don't know how it doesn't work, now to what level, to the level we all expect, we'll find out. But, to think that it's going to be just a colossal failure, just an unmitigated disaster, like no part of me could even begin to think that's going to be the case, like some people want us to believe.
It's just like we've seen this before, Dillon. We've seen this. It looks really familiar. In the fact that Ryan Day was at his press conference talking about how he has studied Saban's run, and he was bringing it up in a different context, talking about, how keeping the defense the same, but the offense consistently changed. But what I immediately went to when he hired Patricia was, this was his MO. He'd lose a good coach. He'd go hire a really talented coach who was down on his luck and needed an opportunity to catapult his career and get things rolling again. And he did it over and over and over again. And it looks exactly like this with Patricia to me. And like you said, those guys too were in the same situation with Sark, who was a successful coach at Washington, got the USC job, got fired, goes there and he's hungry and he's rejuvenated and he's sober. And it just has a lot of the same type of feel to it. And it gets me kind of excited when he says, Day, that he's studying how Saban did that. Like the way he threw that in there so casually, I was like, oh wow, man, this is interesting.
Year after year, when we would see Nick Saban do this, and I think to a man, everybody would be like, why can't Ohio State do this? Like, I mean, obviously Ohio State's the same draw that, Alabama is and coaching it with under Nick Saban. So why can't Ohio State go do this? And it obviously made a ton of sense. Like, these guys are out there, like you said, maybe need an image boost, or just to get back into a position where they can prove that, hey, they're still really, really talented coaches at what they do. It makes a ton of sense to get these guys on your staff, and understanding that it might not be a long-term play, but it just makes a ton of sense. I think we all wanted to see it when Saban, made a habit out of it and had a ton of success still doing it. So here we are doing that. Again, like you mentioned, the Detroit failure as a head coach is kind of shaped so many people's thoughts on this hire, I think. And the good news is, folks, he's not coming to be a head coach at Ohio State. So, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. Again, I understand that all the player issues, if those things were true, and how he handled players, the relationships that he built or, didn't build or couldn't develop, that's obviously a thing that I can't speak to. I don't know for sure. But for one, building relationships with professionals, making millions of dollars, and making relationships with college football players, well, who I guess are still making millions of dollars, but it's a different dynamic there. So
Totally.
I just don't put a lot of stock in that. So
yeah, and we've seen some guys come out and say the opposite, take the opposite side of that too. So, but no, I'm with you. That honestly, that tenure at Detroit means next to nothing to me as it relates to this, other than those relationship things. But even when you go back and look at press conferences back then, like, he just sounds like a different guy. And you know what? That can happen in life. It's happened to plenty of people. Maybe it's happening to him too. But when we look at Day's off season so far, like, there's a couple things he was able to do that I think are just awesome. When you look at Tyler Bowen, who last year was an offensive coordinator, now an offensive line coach, Charlie Dickey working under him, Marcus Johnson working under him. Those guys both had their own offensive line room last year. Tony Washington Jr. had his own position group at UCLA. He's now come in as an assistant. This isn't something most programs have the ability to do, to get guys to, like, such a desirable place to be, that they will drop down in job title just to go be a piece of that. And it makes me feel like currently right now, the coaching fraternity, which is really small, really thinks that the current situation at Ohio State under Ryan Day is something quite special, because this is not something we see often. And we've just seen it with like 4 guys. And we haven't even talked about, like, going back to last year with Chip and Billy Fessler. He had the quarterback room at UCLA. He drops down. Chip drops down. This is not something that's ordinary. Very few schools can pull it off. I think it's very telling.
It is. You're absolutely right. Look, Ohio State just having that on your resume was always a big boost. It's a big stepping stone to have that on your resume. I think you're absolutely right that it speaks a ton to how people feel about Ryan Day and the culture that he's developed, not just as a team, as a program, but within the coaching staff, without a doubt. And also, if you're going to take this approach with, and I don't know if it's a trend so much as it was just what Ryan Day had to do, but if you're going to start this trend of making some big swings for these coordinating hires like this, and guys that are very obviously, going to have, whether they've already coached there before, or, probably for every reason are going to have aspirations of being there, going to the NFL. If you're going to make these big swings like this, you need to start this, kind of cycle of bringing these guys in here, not just, as a coaching tree thing, but you might have natural replacements in-house for some of these jobs, or, just kind of, elevating people up. And so everything about bringing these guys in and seeing these guys willing to, take a lesser role, so to speak, or not so to speak, just lesser roles, period. That's just the way it is. For the chance to be on the staff at Ohio State and be within the walls of the Woody, be around some of these guys, Ryan, obviously, and some of the more tenured guys, it speaks volumes without a doubt. I know culture is such a buzzword and sometimes even a cliche when it comes to college sports and coaching. But it truly does speak to the kind of culture that's within the Woody Hayes Athletic Center right now. That guys are willing to do that because if it wasn't true, certainly guys wouldn't be making those kinds of moves. So a lot of good things going on. I think we probably still won't see the true the after effects of winning a national championship, but it feels like you're already starting to see kind of some of the early signs of that of the long-term momentum that something like that creates, and just kind of getting that monkey off of Ryan's back. So I think the trajectory of the program is clearly, on a steep incline, and moves like that are just every indication of that.
I feel the same. It just feels, it feels palpable. You can feel it in the way everybody talks. It just, I don't know what it is, man. It's like there nothing changed about him as a coach,
No.
or the way the place was run.
Right.
And you get that one win and things just change. It's just different.
Yep. Sure.
You got a chance to talk to Hartline. First time he's talked since his promotion. Ryan Day talked about his confidence and the fact that, anytime Brian Hartline has ever set his mind to do something, he's been extremely successful, not just a little bit successful, very successful. There's a lot of cynicism about this promotion. And I think what Ryan Day was able to do, bringing in Tyler Bowen to assist him in the run game, makes me feel really good. And it just gives it a little added insurance around that. And I just feel pretty good about it. What was your takeaway from, if anything, from the conversation you guys had with Brian Hartline the other day?
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, I'll be honest with you. The idea of Ohio State promoting a first-time play caller, and then, add that with the fact that you're going to be starting a brand new quarterback, that idea scares me a little bit without question. But I had all the confidence. I still have all the confidence in the world in Brian Hartline, the guy. If you're going to do that he would be the guy that, things will be okay. Because one thing that always has jumped out to me about Brian Hartline, and talking to him, and still did on Friday, is that Brian Hartline's willingness to learn never goes away. Like, he is always trying to learn. He's a sponge. He's always soaking up information. His willingness to always get better, or look for ways to get better, has been with him for his entire career, whether it was back to, to being a player, and having good careers at Ohio State and in the NFL, to his time rising through the ranks of coaching. So I feel like where Brian Hartline was when we first, we're told that he was going to get the offensive coordinator, the co-offensive coordinator position, but, he wasn't calling plays, to where he is now when he's actually going to be tasked with calling those plays. I have no doubt that in the time in between those two moments, that Brian Hartline's grown immensely with this in mind, and just being around Ryan Day and Chip Kelly last year as well. So I think, look, there's the element of the unknown is, again, still kind of scary for an offense that's going to be breaking in a brand new quarterback, combined with the first-time play caller, and how that meshes together. Well, we'll see. That's worrisome naturally, but I have all the confidence in the world that Brian Hartline, if you're going to do it, is ready to do it. And maybe there are some growing pains. There will be some growing pains with that, but I think they're going to be all right. When Tyler Bowen was hire, one of my first thoughts was, well, this makes all the sense in the world. If you're going to break in a first-time play caller, get somebody who has experience calling plays, whether it just be for them to kind of, brainstorm together, or if for whatever reason, if things don't go well, you have an experienced player. You have somebody who's called plays before, and he won't be overwhelmed by it. It's not going to be too much for him. That was one of my first thoughts when that hire was announced, because I know a lot of people, felt like that came out of left field. Where did this come from? And Ryan alluded to that on Friday as well, that was important for him when he was thinking about making that hire. So talking to Brian Hartline, that stood out to me, just always talking about his willingness to learn and be a sponge. And, I don't know if he was taking a shot at somebody in particular, or just talking about things he's seen. But, he hasn't, in the grand scheme of things, he hasn't been a coach for that long. And it's all been at Ohio State. So he had to have some people in mind. But he made the comment that, in meeting rooms, it's just about being able to stay off your phone and listen and soak up the information from all these valuable minds that are around you. And he said he didn't understand it, but a lot of guys don't do that. But that's not Brian Hartline. He's made the most of all this time he's had being around some great offensive minds, and even had some time to kind of settle into the offensive coordinator role, with an eye towards eventually one day calling plays. So I think he's going to be ready for it. I don't know what that looks like, and look, Ryan Day's still going to factor into that as well. We know that.
Sure.
And so, for better or for worse, according to some people. But he's still going to be a factor there. And Ryan Day's had a lot of success calling plays at Ohio State, so they'll be all right in that regard. And you want to go back to just perfect scenarios and perfect settings for guys to grow into their careers. What a perfect opportunity for Brian Hartline with his talent, with the people around him to help him into this. I'll take my chances that it's going to be all right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. He also seemed very, very adamant that his wide receivers are going to get the same exact coaching that they have, and his organization is going to make sure that, I mean, it's going to be a challenge to him, but the organization is going to make sure that that he doesn't get pulled away from them. If he does, Devin Jordan knows the operation, been there forever.
Yeah. Well, I did ask him, and I'm curious, just knowing how Brian Hartline coaches and the way as hands-on as he is on the sidelines. I asked him if he thought about if he'd be in the box or if he'd stay down on the sideline, and he said, yeah, he's given it a lot of thought, but hasn't come to a conclusion yet. And certainly Ryan Day's input on that's going to be a big factor in that as well. But I am curious about that because I can't imagine a scenario where Brian Hartline's not with his guys on the sideline. It just doesn't seem like Brian Hartline could live with that. But at the same time, I think it's really tough for a first-time play caller to be doing that from the sideline. I don't understand how guys call plays from the sideline, period. I'm not a coach, and I know plenty of guys do, especially in the NFL when you have head coaches who are also play callers and things like that. But for a first-time play caller, that just seems wild to me to think that he could be on the sideline and do that and do both at a high level. So I got to believe he's ultimately going to be in the box, but at the same time, I just can't envision Brian Hartline not being on the sideline with his guys either. So it'll be interesting to see.
And we had this conversation last year, you and I, about Chip, and he was weighing the pluses and minuses of each scenario. And I think it felt like, to me, he was leaning towards he wanted to be on the sideline. And I think that he got vetoed with that decision. And I don't know, I don't know how you can take this on for the first time and do it from the sideline. You need your stuff laid out. You just need a space to work. You got a lot of pressure, no distractions. It would seem would be the way you would want to go about it would be the ideal scenario. And I don't know, man, maybe if Tyler Bowen wasn't coaching the offensive line and he could be the guy in the booth, but he can't do that. He's got to be with those dudes. So yeah, interesting scenario. Ultimately, I think he ends up in the box. I don't see any other way around it. But yeah, like you said, he is incredibly hands-on with those guys, and that's going to suck. He's going to have to get used to that.
Yeah. Well, as you alluded to as well, I mean, he has somebody he trusts wholeheartedly to be there with those guys on the sideline, so that's obviously a plus as well. Maybe makes it a little easier. But
last year, when we did our spring discussions heading into spring, we both agreed that the tight end room was probably the least talented room on the team. And you got to talk to Keenan Bailey. I thought Keenan gave the absolute best 15 minutes of everybody. It was awesome. It was incredible. But we'll talk about the Max Clare thing. But one of the things he was talking about was that them being the least talented group on the team last year. He said he told them that, which was awesome. And that, got their identity. We got to be the tough ones. We're not the talented guys here. And I was very skeptical about him coming into that role for the last, it's been, a couple years now, but the first year was just basically Cade. But last year in particular, it was what's he going to do with these guys? They just got better and better and better. And it looked like, they came into Bennett Christian and G were, leaders towards the end of the season. And it just looked like, man, this guy's doing a great job. And I started to see kind of what we've heard about him for so many years, how valuable he is to them inside the building and why everybody just loves him. And you got to talk to him, and he was talking about the situation with him being with Hartline and Day for 10 years now. And I was just thinking what I really hadn't thought of before, but you bring back Billy Fessler, you've got Hartline, you've got Keenan, and it's kind of like this is Day's coaching tree right here. And I think all these guys are going to go on to be very, very successful. And the way they talk about Day is almost with reverence when they talk about him and his football knowledge. I think it's really cool, something I hadn't picked up on before.
I've been here going on damn near a decade, and my two bosses have been Ryan Day and Brian Hartline. for 10 years. So like we know each other every day for whatever, 8 years. So that continuity, even you mentioned Billy Fessler, he was gone and came back. So yeah, we're young, but we've been together. Show me another staff that's been together for 8 years that knows each other that well and that's, been this productive. I don't think there is one.
Yeah, without question. For one, with Keenan, I think it can't be overstated. The leadership that he had from his guys in the room last year played a big part in that room ultimately becoming what it was when we didn't think that was probably in the cards for that group. So I think you got to give a lot of credit. Obviously, Keenan's at the head of that, but I think you got to give a lot of credit to G and Bennett and even Will for that leadership in that room as well, and the accountability that they had to get better. So there's a big part of that as well. But I'm not surprised by that in terms of Keenan, just because of, again, as you said, everything we've heard about him, and even just talking to him, he's a very well-spoken, articulate guy. He can be very direct in the way he says things, but says it in a way that's, it doesn't come off as harsh. It's just those are hard truths, and so I can only imagine what those meeting rooms, that meeting room is like, and the meetings that they have with them as well. So, but what you were saying about the coaching tree, yeah, I mean it's crazy. Time flies by the fact that we're sitting here talking about a Ryan Day coaching tree.
Yeah.
But the people that are in that, and you hope that Brian Hartline being a perfect example of that. Getting this role as an offense coordinator, you hope that these guys are here for a while now, but you're not looking too far down the road of some of these guys, branching out. And I know Billy Fessler is going to be a head coach someday. He will be. That guy seems like he's a superstar. I don't say a superstar, but he's going to be a hot commodity soon enough. And it's going to start really quickly too. If, Julian's saying, and I know they're married together, having talent, actually realizing itself on the field. There's a big coaching element as well. But if you get Julian saying, assuming he wins the job and he plays well out there, Billy Fessler is going to be a hot commodity really quickly. So it's just so weird to think we're talking about a Ryan Day coaching tree, because it seems like, in my mind, it was just 3 years ago that it was my first season on the beat and it was his first season in the program. And now we're talking about a Ryan Day coaching tree. But that coaching tree is going to start branching pretty quickly, for sure, with some of these names on there.
Yeah, we can include James in there too, So
yeah, very true.
It's pretty cool. I think the most interesting thing of the day was Keenan Bailey walking us through the situation with Max Clare, which, Max Clare is a bona fide superstar in the making. Yep. He is the number one receiving tight end in the country. And the guy is just awesome. And now we found out that he's not only awesome on the field, like he sounds pretty awesome off the field. Yep. Keenan talks about, number one, he's not going to waste a single minute recruiting a guy or recruiting a guy on the portal. Said, I'm not even going to work you out. But if you want to come meet, it's going to be after hours. And they came and met for 2.5 hours. And based off of that, that's how they move forward with that, which says to me, Max Clare really wanted to be at Ohio State, which is pretty cool. Love to hear that, obviously, from a kid out of St. Xavier. Yeah. But that look behind the curtain there from that whole process was really interesting. I thought the most interesting thing was him talking about going to Kaz and Bennett and saying, I asked their permission to go talk to him. And
the conversation, I went to Will and I went to Bennett, and I said, listen, I have not talked to him yet. With your permission, I will. And if he's a culture fit, that was my only promise. If he doesn't fit you guys, I'm not going to bring him in. But I think he has a skill set that might be complementary to you guys, and I think it might make the room better. And they were like, Coach, let's go get him.
And we talk about the transfer portal all the time. Often we forget the thing that they got to deal with day to day, which is how does that guy coming in affect their guys in their room, which can be incredibly detrimental. You could lose a guy, and it's not just about losing that guy. It's about all his buddies that are left behind, and their buddy just walked out. There's a real balancing act, and it seems like he handled it pretty damn smooth here.
Yeah, without question. Look, there's a fine line. As you kind of just said, there's a fine line between just saying we're going to go out and get the best guy that we can get for our, for our room, whatever room that may be, and that's just life at Ohio State. And also, as you said, kind of spoiling the culture inside a room. And so, going back to the Max Clare thing, you know how jarring that probably was to Max for all the teams that were reaching out to him, programs reaching out to him, about his services and as good as he was, and knowing he was going to go somewhere and be a star somewhere or expected to, how jarring that probably was for Keenan Bailey to be like, yeah, if you want to come, but like, I'm not recruiting you. So if you show up at the Woody, I'll talk to you for sure, and we'll have a good conversation about how you might fit in this program and what we might be able to do with you. But that's on you, and just kind of putting the ball in his court. Like
I told him, I said, listen, I'm not going to sacrifice for 1 second any of my energy on you or a recruit or anybody. We're trying to go win the national championship. So even like that was the conversation. It was all about timing and being a fit. Like I told him, I said, I'm not going to bring you here for a practice because I didn't think that was appropriate for me to be recruiting this kid in the portal while I'm coaching up these guys. So I didn't even bring him in for a practice. I said, if you want to come talk to me about this opportunity, it's got to be on an off day or an evening. And that's exactly what happened.
That just doesn't happen in today's world of recruiting, whether it's, high school recruits or portal recruits. So that was probably pretty jarring to him to be like, I would imagine even off-putting to be like, I can't figure out, does this guy want me to come show up or and have a conversation or not? And like you said, that obviously meant Max Clare was very, very interested in being a Buckeye for all the reasons. I mean, all those reasons are obvious. I imagine that was probably pretty jarring. But
the part of me, Dillon, is like, was he playing him? Was this all part of his recruiting strategy? Because how could you possibly not want this guy? He's fantastic. And even the asking permission to Kaz and Bennett, like I'm not convinced he doesn't like he knows what the answer is going to be before he asks. He already knows they're going to say yes. I wonder if he doesn't know the answer, if he really asked that, because when I think about it, it's like, all right, yeah, obviously Day went to Travion before Quinshawn came in and he talked to him about that. But Bennett Christian and Will Kazmarek are not on the same level as Max Clare. A little bit of a different scenario here. You got an opportunity to upgrade that kind of talent in your room. It's a real interesting situation. I mean, obviously he played it out perfectly, however it worked out, but it is interesting as hell.
I think like the approach that he took with that wasn't so much that he was trying to play a game with them or like he was just, mildly interested in Max Clare coming to Ohio State, but it was kind of just a product of the unique situation he was in where like Keenan Bailey quite literally couldn't spend time going to try to recruit Max Clare because they were trying to go win a national title. And the utmost respect to Keenan Bailey for saying like, there's one thing that matters to me right now. And the only thing in order to get all my attention, and that's trying to win a national championship for Ohio State. So I think it was kind of a product of that. Well, Keenan Bailey's just like, I can't recruit you right now. I'm not going to, because I just have, it wouldn't be fair to the guys I have in my room and what we're trying to accomplish. So I get all that. But I think there's an element, and again, this is just my opinion. If Keenan Bailey had a Tyler Warren type of player in his room already, and I guess it begs the question, why would they even be going after? They probably wouldn't go after a Max Clare. But let's just say there's a player like that, an established talent like that, a future high round draft pick like that. I don't know that, I'm sure Keenan Bailey, I understand if you go to that guy and say, hey, we're interested in adding another tight end, and he's really good, and he's going to play, and he's going to see the field. We're going to find ways to get him in here. How do you feel about that? Then I would understand that. But I felt like that was probably just a courtesy to go to Bennett Christian and Will and say, hey, I'd like to bring this guy in, but what do you think? Every part of me believes if either one of them was like, I'll be honest with you, coach, if you do that, I'm not going to be too happy about it. I don't love the idea. We put a lot of time, effort. We're looking forward to an increased opportunity. I don't think Keenan Bailey is going to say, all right, sorry, Max Clare, we're going to have to pass on you. We're not going to add you to our room. Keenan even made the comment that, they're always, I asked him, were you looking to add a tight end in general, or were you looking to add Max Clare because that guy's available? And he said, he's always looking to add to his room. If they can make that room better, then they're going to add to it. So that philosophy there doesn't mesh with the idea that Bennett Christian could have steered you away from Max Clare. So I believe every part of Keenan Bailey was going to go get Max Clare if he could get him, regardless of what they said. But hey, you extend the courtesy and you hope that, like you said, it goes well. And they say, yeah, we're fine with that. And, that's the culture that, we've bred in this program and certainly in this room, that, competition is going to make everybody better. But I firmly believe he was going to go after Max Clare no matter what Bennett Christian or Will Kazmarek said. So.
Yeah, yeah, and you know the kicker is if he doesn't come to Ohio State, he probably ends up at Oregon. So now you're
Yep.
playing against him.
Right. True.
Ryan Day obviously brought up the timing of everything with the portal and the fact that the Buckeyes and Notre Dame were the last two teams with guys still available that 5-day period after their last game, and everybody around the country is sitting there like, well, I could use a one of these or one of these. There's only two teams to go try to pick that off of. It is absolutely ridiculous. He made a proposal of, look, let's just do one in the spring, but he was clearly pretty ticked off, and I love it when he gets ticked off like that.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a lot of questions about things like this in over the course of a press conference, because we're all kind of learning how this is going to work and how it is working right now. We're not working, for that matter, as we go, because it's new territory. So there's been a lot of good interactions and a lot of good just insight from Ryan, on some of these things that are new and some of the things that come to these issues that arise out of certain circumstances. Whoever played the national championship game last year, that situation was going to be true for those two teams, and it happens to be that Ohio State was one of them. So we got to hear that from Ryan Day. But two programs were going to have an issue with that no matter what. So look at it. I mean, it's complete. It's absolute crap that's the case. It's inevitable. I mean, you could have seen this coming, obviously, like you said. Late. You need a late guy, or you want to take one more guy, and there's only a couple programs to so. But I don't know how they fix that. I don't even try to rack my brain around how these things get fixed. There are so many things in college football that are, I don't want to say need to get fixed. Well, a lot of things need to get fixed. Things need to get tweaked. All these things, like, it just seems like college football is just an absolute work in progress to the utmost degree. And it's just it's exhausting, and I can't even. It's exhausting for you or I to sit here and talk about like all these things that are coming down the pipe, or things that are on the table that need to be changed or might be changed. And like, think about that for a football coach who's also get ready for spring practice. So yeah, it's crazy.
Let's get to Coach Locke, who I think did a just fantastic job with the running backs last year. Obviously had two fantastic backs, but they both ran a little bit different than they had before, with a little bit more attitude. Took on the whole Locke Boys mantra, which I loved.
Yeah.
And he's got a very different looking room this year, with James Peoples in his second year, senior West Virginia transfer CJ Donaldson, two all-purpose freshman backs in Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. Isaiah's been injured. He told me he'll be ready to roll in the fall, but he's going to miss, all the way up until then. And then freshman Turbo Rogers, who's still not there. He won't be in until summer. So really, when you look at the top of the room, you're looking at Peoples, CJ Donaldson, and Bo Jackson. You got some Sam Williams-Dixon and some TC Caffey, but I think those three are the guys you're going to be looking at here. And when he talked about Bo Jackson, boy, he sure lit up. He's 6 foot 220, fast. He's got all the gifts only God can give him, and now it's just about competing.
You look at Bo Jackson, he got size. I think he's right now 6 foot 220. Speed. He got gifts only God can give him. So you see the potential what he could be. Now he's gonna have to work and compete, but I'm excited about him. But like I said, we'll see. Same thing with Isaiah West. You see his size. He's right at 5'11", 215. Built the right way, but he has the right mindset. So you get excited about him because his mindset is like, he seems so much older than he is when you talk to him. His mind is in the right place. And then, like I said, Turbo Rogers is somebody that I've been building a relationship with since he's been in probably 7th grade. And to get him here, to have an opportunity to coach him, I'm excited. But the 3 freshmen we got coming in, I'm telling you, I'm excited about them just to see what their journey going to look like into college football.
When we talk about CJ Donaldson, let's start with him. Comes to Ohio State listed at 6'2", 238. And I said on my running back preview show that it's going to peel some weight off him. He's at 238. He's not lean. He can stand to probably get down to about 225 and look really svelte and probably pick up some shiftiness, pick up some speed.
DJ's listed at 238. Is that about right? Is he about 238
No,
pounds?
he's down. He's down to almost close to 230 now.
Okay.
And that's one of the goals I set for him to lose weight. I think he can help us, along with James. And like I said, I'm excited about the young guys. I'm just excited about the competition in the room.
Coach,
thus far in his career, pretty decent down by the goal line, can catch the ball, 15 receptions last year, split the backfield last year, just kind of like Ohio State, like a 50-50 split. And, the numbers weren't great. So far in this guy's career, he's basically been a guy with some talent, but just a guy. And I think that he has some promise. I think that Locke is a really good running back coach, and he can get some more production out of him than he had at West Virginia. But what is your take on C.J. Donaldson coming in here, him splitting the backfield with James Peoples, who I think we both think has a really, really bright future?
Well, I want to preface anything we talk about the running backs, I want to preface it all by just warning people to stop trying to search for the next Henderson Judkins duo, because I don't think people realize just how blessed Ohio State was to have not just two, running backs of that quality, but for them to stay healthy like they did over the course of a long season. Like that scenario, I'm going to go on a limb and say that doesn't play out like that too many times, to have two backs of that caliber both staying healthy throughout the season, all the way, to the finish line. So, trying to compare it to that, if you think that that's the goal, that you're striving to try to replace those guys and get back to that same situation, you're going to be disappointed no matter what, because you probably just don't get back to that. At least, not this year, and probably not most years. CJ Donaldson, the book on him is obvious. Like, he's a power back. He's going to be good around the goal line. He runs through contact really well. Can catch the ball to a decent degree. Reminds me a little bit of like a Mine Williams kind of guy. Maybe not quite that, but just that kind of guy. So there's a role for that guy. There's a role for that kind of player in this offense without question. I know Bo Jackson's going to be a guy that, is going to be kind of like the shiny new commodity. And certainly the way Locke talked about him is only going to increase that intrigue with Bo Jackson. But, I'm okay with the James Peoples, CJ Donaldson duo, to start the season. And I think that there's a way to use both of those guys, especially with CJ Donaldson down in near the goal line or in short yardage situations. He has a little bit of he has that short burst as well. He's not going to be a home run hitter. He's not going to be a guy that's going to run away from, the second, third levels of the defense. But he has some short bursts as well to hit holes. So I think Locke will bring more out of him than what you've seen, on film in his time in West Virginia. So I'm okay with those two guys. But I understand people are going to want to talk about Bo Jackson a lot because he's a physical specimen. Looks like he's ready to play now. The idea of James Peoples being in his first year as a primary ball carrier and a featured back, and Bo Jackson's being that other guy and as a true freshman is kind of worrisome with that lack of experience. But the room, I'm not sure how that room ultimately plays out or how it shakes out, but I have to believe that it's going to be CJ Donaldson and James Peoples splitting those carries early on. And I think I think they'll be okay with that. I think Ohio State will be fine with that.
Yeah. When we look at the future of this room, this year is a little sketchy for sure, but the guys he's in on right now that I think he's going to end up with a Derek Cooper or Jay Lamar in this next class, in the freshman class that he just had with Peoples in year 3, like next year, I think we're going to be looking at a running back room that is going to be like one we haven't seen in quite a while. I'm like uber talented from top to bottom. And it's pretty exciting what he's been able to do, calling himself not an elite recruiter, but an elite relationship builder. And he definitely is. That's for sure. I'm really excited for the future of that running back room with him.
If James Peoples is 80% of what I think he is, what I thought he was from the start, I think what you think he is as well. If he's 80% of that, Ohio State's going to be all right at running back just from that alone, because I think James Peoples has a really bright future ahead of him. And obviously health can derail any room, but especially at a running back room. So, but if he's 80% of what I think he is and what he will be, then Ohio State's good right then and there. If he's even more than 80% of that, if he's just ready to take that next step that I think he'll take at some point, Ohio State's going to be fine there, because that's going to be a guy that better get the ball 25 times a game. And then past that, obviously you find situations for CJ Donaldson, and there will be situations where maybe even it is Bo Jackson by the end of the year. But I think while it's sketchy as you put it this year, maybe if James Peoples is the guy that I think he is, then they'll be all right then and there, because yes, the 2-back system, the long season, I get all that, but sometimes you just have a guy who is just the best guy in your room, and you're gonna have to ride him to some degree, And so I think James Peoples in this situation, partly because of the room that they have, and also because I think that highly of James Peoples is just going to kind of emerge as like he's just the best back of this group, period. So to some degree, you want to keep him fresh and split some carries, and but you need to ride James Peoples, and I think that will kind of become evident early on in the season.
He's an awesome dude too. I love listening to him. Like, I know I talk about it all the time, but it's just so amazing to me that these guys in that building and in this program, that every single one we talk about, I think about, I'm like, man, that's an awesome kid. Like, they're all such good people and friendly and like mature. Like, it's impressive. It's just really impressive. Let's talk about another CJ. CJ Hicks, Larry Johnson says he's in my room, drops it. He's in my room. They have finally put the guy where he belongs. He definitely was not going to play linebacker this year, if he stayed in the room or not. So he goes down there. Now he's got a shot to hit the field. There's not a lot of depth there, as we know. And he said he's working with him as a defensive end. We've got people really, really excited talking our Micah Parsons, our Abdul Carter. I don't have that high of hopes for how this is going to work out for him. What's your feeling about the whole thing, other than, it's about time?
Well, speaking with you very early on last year, which was probably either my first or one of my first few shows that I did with you, we talked about CJ Hicks that spring, and I thought like this guy has all the makings of a Micah Parsons type. I'm not saying he was, go on to be a first round draft pick and probably a future Hall of Fame NFL, Pro Football Hall of Famer, but with his body type and athleticism, I thought like there was a real possibility that he gets within that, that realm. And obviously it never translated. They're still trying to force him into that linebacker hole. But so I'm not saying that happens, but I'm just glad that like it's a plan. I think it's the only plan. And he can just fully dive into the world of being an edge guy and try to learn that. Larry Johnson talked about the fact that, just turning CJ loose and letting him get after the quarterback, that's up CJ's wheelhouse right now. Like he's somewhat, ready for that now. Obviously, he has to learn the nuances of pass rushing and, adding to his, his rush packages and things like that. But there's an element that CJ already has of just like turning him loose and getting after the quarterback. But playing as an edge guy, you still have to, have to understand how you support the run game and things of that nature. So there's more than just being an edge guy and getting after the passer. So I'm glad that he's just that's his position now. That's who he is, and that's how he'll approach the spring and into the summer and certainly into fall camp, and hopefully get him ready to be that. Because if you ask me, as of right now, and I don't think this is going to change before fall camp gets here, the single biggest question I have and the single biggest worry I have with Ohio State heading into 2025 is that the lack of pass rushers on that team. And so if they can get him ready to be that guy, that not just a third down guy, not just a rushman guy, that, but they can get him to be a guy that can be on the field, on first and second down as well. That's a huge development for a team that desperately needs somebody to emerge for that depth there. So I'm excited that they're, at least starting on that path now. They're not kind of jerking him around here. Is he this? Is he that? Maybe he could be that. That he's an edge guy now. Larry's got a hold of him, and I've got to believe by late August he'll be ready enough that he can at least be depth there, and we know as an athlete that he'll make some plays for them. So happy to see that.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point about desperately in need of an edge rusher, this is consistently my point about the comments that recruiting doesn't matter anymore. You can just go get 2 starting tackles. Like, this is the reason that they had to get those 2 tackles. Yeah. That's why you couldn't go get a top end edge rusher to add to this, because you had to go get a couple of $1 million tackles. So, it definitely does matter. Larry talked about Edric Houston. There had been some talk about him maybe moving back outside. He said, no, he's inside now. He's 285, 290. And when we talk about him, I think he's a future first round pick. We're both very high on Caden McDonald. After that, We've seen Taiwan Malone bust out for a game. We've not seen anything out of Jason Moore, and now he enters year 3. We got Will Smith in the mix there.
Yeah.
Losing Hero turned out to be a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
We've got freshman Jarquez Carter, who's the leader of the pack of that crew, and it's just a lot of inexperience. I mean, there's some talent there. Again, a little sketchy. There's talent, but we just don't have any idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's March 9th, but I'm down on the Ohio State defensive line right now. If you consider the fact that there was already going to be a natural drop off from just what we just saw, how good that unit was, there was already going to be a natural drop off because, just like I said with the running backs, like to try to strive to meet that standard again, probably not realistic. That's not, that's how you win national championships, when all these things come together. And it's just if it did every year, you'd win national championships every other year, or go on a run of 2-3 in a row. I'm a little down on defensive line. Somebody's got to really emerge that we didn't really see coming, like a Jason Moore. We heard a lot about Jason Moore last fall during camp, about Jason Moore being a guy that was going to be a factor in that rotation, and on the 2 deep. Never was. A guy like that's just going to have to emerge and be ready to take it. Look, Jason Moore is a talented player. He has a great frame, so he's got to be a guy who just takes that step, and like he finally puts his foot in the ground and says he's going to be a producer at Ohio State. They're going to need a couple of guys like that to emerge, or I don't see how Ohio State's defensive line's not kind of a weak link. As we all know, you can't have weak links up front, whether it's offensively or defensively, and have a ton of success. I'm not saying that they're going to be bad in that sense, but if you want to talk about elite defensive play, man, it's really worrisome. And if they're worrisome up front, it's going to be tough at the second and third levels as well. So I hope guys emerge, but as it stands right now, it's not overly encouraging. I think it's easily by far the biggest concern that Ohio State has right now. Yeah,
definitely the biggest concern. I feel good about the starters. I really do. It's just after that, it's just
right.
It's not like you draw it up.
Well,
Dillon, do you have the?
Sorry, I just want to add one more. The philosophy that Larry Johnson has, the way he rolls those guys too. Like you're right. I feel good about the starter as well. But if he just insists, like he's going to roll guys, even if the depth's not ready, but he's just going to roll these guys because he doesn't want these guys playing 45 snaps a game as starters. So he's going to play these depth guys, whether like they should be out there or not. That's worrisome as well. But I also understand the fact that if you play these starters 45, 50 plays a game, and then they wear down, then it's kind of a double-edged sword. So there's a lot of elements there that are worrisome, but we'll find out.
I love playing Texas game 1. I think it's so awesome to get a feel right off the rip. All right, how do we stack up? They're replacing a lot too. We both are in the hundreds when it comes to returning production. I just think it's going to be really cool to see how these two kind of titans entering next year match up. Do you guys have the schedule yet for spring as to how many, what days you're going to be, how many days you're going to be able to get in there?
No, Jerry said that he'll send that out to us very soon. We didn't find out about, I think it was Thursday, we found out about the whole Friday, interviews with our media availability with the whole coaching staff. He texted us on Thursday that was happening on Friday. Which, look, I'm not saying anything bad about that. It's just, it was like kind of like weird, like, hey, be ready tomorrow. We're going to give you the entire.
So I felt like an idiot, Dillon. I was telling everybody on the show, I'm like, yeah, maybe Coach Day is going to bring somebody with him. And then there's 10 people. And I'm like, I don't know where I missed this, guys. I'm sorry. All right. So now I'm happy that you just found out the day before.
No, I had to read the text message twice. I'm like, did he just say we're getting the whole coaching staff? Tomorrow, like, hey, be ready for it. I was like, which great. I was excited, but I just, so no, but so he said that he would send out that the schedule for that soon. I wouldn't be surprised if we get it tonight, but if we don't get it tonight, we'll get it tomorrow. So,
all right, rock and roll, brother.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dillon. You got anything else?
No. I can't wait to, get back into talking and seeing how things progress in the spring. I don't know how the spring is going to look. We know, there's a lot to be still to be determined with the spring showcase and what that looks like. I was encouraged to hear that Ryan Day said that they're going to try to play as much football as possible. Still don't know what that looks like. But
So as you know, I've been all right. Now you're going to get me rolling here. I've been very vocal about my irritation with this whole spring game situation sweeping the country. And I was very happy to hear that Ryan Day was talking like this is actually going to look like football, and it's actually going to be the people we want to see, which are the young guys, and he's going to hold out the older guys. Right. So, maybe I was a little premature in my irritation, but it's just coming from a place of like we just continue to lose more and more and more. And it bothers the hell out of me.
I totally get it. We've talked about, the spring game and the merits, the way we think about, the merits of spring games these days and whatnot. But I totally agree with you that like just losing spring games just seems like another, drop in the bucket of everything we knew about college football, everything we grew up with, everything that made us fall in love with it. It's just fallen by the wayside. So I totally get that. I also understand that, a lot of people when this initially came out thought that by spring showcase, he meant there was going to be like a fan fest outside the stadium. And like, that was it. And I knew that wasn't going to be the case at all. There's too much money involved to not have something inside the horseshoe that involves, some type of football to some degree. So, it'll still be a good day. And just like we've always seen with the spring game, weather permitting, it'll be well attended. And as I told you before, I want to see the young guys. That's why I go to spring games. That's why I've always gone to spring games. I want to see these guys, these recruits that I followed and this next wave. So I hope there's a ton of that. There should be a ton of that. So I'm just excited to get back in the spring and start seeing some of these guys and start seeing how some of these battles and these units progress. As we start to look with an eye towards it's March 9th now. It'll be April before we know it. Into the summer. And so, I'm excited to start getting a kind of a little feel for where this team's at and, what might be something to watch and then things that are, we talk about the defensive line being issues right now. That's just what I know now. What I know now and what could be true, with injuries or, guys just not looking good. And, we don't see a ton of practice, so it's not like I have huge evaluations, but there might be problems that jump up. Or like I said with Taiwan last year, not that he was an all-star, like there might be some, guys on that defensive line you look at and be like, oh, okay, like, yeah, if they can get this guy even remotely ready to play, like he'll be a factor in that. So, I'm excited to start seeing those things and kind of starting to get little glimpses of what these answers might look like come.
And it's way more interesting heading into this spring than it was last spring, where everything was kind of buttoned down. There was, all right, what does Caleb look like? What does Will look like? And we know everything else. We got a whole lot of questions, which makes it fun. And I'm sure you'll be back soon to discuss it with me and all the JUCK guys. Dillon, thank you so much for joining us, buddy.
Appreciate you, my man.
All right. Talk soon, buddy.
See ya.
And thanks to Dillon for joining us. Always an interesting conversation when he and I get together. Hope you guys enjoyed. A couple of your comments before we get out of here. There was a whole lot of reaction to the interview that we did with 10 questions with JUCK, the new segment we just started here. 10 questions with JUCK. I'm going to have some more people on and do that with. Takes about 10 minutes. We can put it into an episode. I think it keeps it, we get a lot of information, but it doesn't drown on and ask a bunch of questions that a lot of people don't want to know. We keep it short. We keep it tight. If you guys like it, we'll do some more of those. So I had Brady Edmonds on, 5-star Buckeye commit from Huntington Beach, California. And it was really popular. You guys really liked it. A couple of comments about that. But before we get into a couple of comments about that, there is another player signed in the class of 2027, and that's Jameer Brown. Jameer Brown, the second highest or the first highest rated player in the state of Ohio, a 5-star wide receiver out of Wayne High School, Braxton Miller's high school. And he is just a dynamic wide receiver. So you've got Brady, the 5-star quarterback, Jameer Brown, the number 2 wide receiver. They're both the number 2 quarterback, number 2 wide receiver in their whole class. And Jameer, who committed to the Buckeyes during the season, has now scheduled a visit to Miami and Tennessee and Oregon, and some people are kind of shook. And I just wanted to remind everybody that after Jameer committed, he went out and got this, Showtime, his nickname, with the Block O. So he said he's going through his recruiting process just as a backup plan, but nobody should feel any stress about it whatsoever. And as you can see, Once you get a tattoo, that's where you got to go. Them is the rules. Take the Cannoli says, great interview. Agree. I was shocked to hear him say he's going to be a Buckeye, regardless of who's steering the ship. This is awesome. And it is, man. I really cannot, like, I don't recall hearing any recruit say that. I haven't heard that, not anytime recently. That's something right there. That really is something. So Brady Edmonds is a total stud and a total Buckeye. And you guys often keep my receipts, right? So I get it. Like, I put myself out there with my opinions all the time. And of course, they're not always going to be right. And you guys let me know when they're not. I want to let you guys know that I have started a little folder in my photos in my iPhone. So, you do the little folders in your iPhone in the photos, and I just have named it receipts. So I'm going to start keeping some of your receipts, and let's start with the first one that I have saved. It is from our buddy, Steven. It's a long one. Steven says, Matt Patricia is really good at talking a hell of a game. He's like a carnival barker who wants to guess your weight for a stuffed animal. The fact that Patricia still has the useless pencil prop nestled above his ear tells me that he still has a big ego problem. Never could figure out what the pencil is there for. He certainly never uses it. Apparently, Matty still believes that the pencil makes him look more intelligent. LOL. It seems as though many of the Buckeyes bandwagon fans believe that cutting his beard down and losing some weight makes Matt Patricia a better coach. Laugh my butt off. If I were a betting man, I would bet that buyer's remorse will be the end of the result of Patricia's first and probably only season at Ohio State. I really hope I'm wrong, and I'll be the first person to admit that I was. All right. You'll be the first person to admit that you were. I'm going to hold you to it because that's going in the receipts column that I'll be keeping. We got another one going in there. Channel for Mark. There is absolutely no way Patricia will be a success. I lived in the state up north during the Lions 0-16 season. He's going to throw the defense into chaos. All right, so we got our first two going in the receipts bin, and I'm going to hold you guys to it. We'll see what happens. We got a long time before we get to discuss the results of that, and I'm sure you guys will make some comments between now and then about Patricia, but we'll see what happens. I have full confidence that this defense will keep on rolling. It's going to look like a machine again. If nothing, if there are issues, it's going to be hiccups because we got young players here and there. It is not going to be a result of poor defensive coordinating. And that's my stance on it. We got yours, and we'll see who is right at the end. I think that the pencil prop is interesting. Now, we've seen the pencil while he's got the laminated sheet, but he went on about the pencil in his press conference. He talked about, the reason he's got the pencil is because he's consistently drawing up plays, taking notes. Just because he's got the pencil behind his ear and the laminated sheet in his hand doesn't mean he doesn't have his notebook in his pocket to use his pencil on, right? Right? You think it's a prop. I get it. I'm kind of cynical too. Maybe it is. Nonetheless, even if he is putting on a big shtick, trying to make himself look more, look more appealing to the masses, I still think that he's a really good defensive mind, and I think he sucked as a head coach. I also think that he'd probably be a lot better as a head coach a second time around, but some jobs are over people's heads, and that clearly was. At any rate, appreciate you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon. JUCK and Bucks out.